Hey Ascend fam, this is Brady. This is B Money here. I'm so glad that you guys can tune in. And so I'm going to be giving you guys the Bible lesson today. If you guys remember, our new series that we're talking about is the characteristics of kingdom workers. So we're going through different stories in the Bible and talking about 5 different characteristics that make a kingdom worker. So if you guys tuned in last week, Joey gave us the word and he talked about courage. So if you remember, he talked about Queen Esther and how, she became queen and found out that there was a plot to kill all the Jews. And she was scared to tell the king about it, but she had courage and she knew that God would provide and that maybe even that was why she was queen, so she could be able to help the Jews. And so she had courage through that hard time, and God provided for her. And so that was one characteristic that I think as kingdom workers that we need. We talked about how, us going back to school, that things may be scary, like, it's hard to talk to students, it's hard to talk to our friends, our family about God, but we need to have courage, that God has put us in the positions that we're in to talk about Him to our friends, to our families. And so that's why we need courage in everything that we do. So today we're talking about our second characteristic of kingdom workers, and that characteristic is going to be compassion. And so I have a definition of compassion from Merriam-Webster Dictionary, and it says compassion is sympathetic consciousness of others' distress together with a desire to alleviate it. So those are some big words in there, but there's 2 parts to it. So first, compassion is a sympathetic consciousness of others' distress. What that means is compassion is caring about others. That, we don't just care about others, but we care about others, what their problems are. That, it's easy to be so focused on ourselves that we forget that other people are struggling too. And it's not just, other people has problems, but it's caring about that. So it's that, my sister, or my friend, or my parent is struggling with this. And not just, they have a problem, but, man, I care about them. And that leads to the second part of what we can do. That, compassion is, we see a problem, we see a need. But a lot of times we can just be like, that person's struggling, and then we just walk away. But what compassion does is, together with that sympathy, we have a desire to alleviate that problem. So we see like, these people are struggling. Let's see what we can do. And that's what compassion is all about. God has shown compassion on us so much in the fact that He's seen that we struggle. He knew before the beginning of the world that we were going to struggle with sin. And so He sent His Son to alleviate that problem. He sent His Son to save us. And that's what compassion is all about. So the Bible character that we're going to talk about compassion with is Ruth. So if you want to turn to the book of Ruth, it's 4 chapters. It's a really good book, but I'm just going to give you kind of a synopsis of it. So there was a man, and he went to Moab. He took his wife, Naomi, and he took his 2 sons, and they went to Moab because there was a famine. They lived in Bethlehem. They were Jews, and because there was a famine, they went to this pagan land called Moab. And so it was a faraway place, and they heard that's where things were getting better, so they went there. And while they were there, the man dies. So it's just his wife Naomi and her 2 sons. So when the 2 sons get old enough, they marry 2 women, 2 Moabite women, one named Ruth and one named Orpah. But then a few years later, the 2 sons die. So now they're in this land of Moab, and it's just 3 women that they don't have any children, and they're all widows. And in that time, a woman without a husband or without a son was practically worthless. They didn't have anyone to work. They didn't have any way to provide for themselves. And so it was a hard time. And so, Naomi decided to go back to her family in Bethlehem. She decided to go back to where her family was. And so she decided to return to Bethlehem, and she told her 2 daughters-in-laws to go home, to go back to Moab. She didn't want them to have to make this journey with her to this new place. So they both were really sad, but Orpah was like, okay, this stinks, but I'm going to go back to my family, and she left. But Ruth wouldn't leave Naomi. Ruth said, Naomi, I'm going to stay with you. I'm going to go with you. Your God will be my God. Your people will be my people. Wherever you go, I'm going to go. And she went with Naomi. So they traveled back to Bethlehem, and while they're there, Ruth provides for Naomi. Ruth goes to a field owned by a man named Boaz, and she collects grain so that they can both eat. She goes behind the actual workers and collects grain. She's there all day to collect grain so they can eat. And this man, Boaz, takes pity on her. He sees her, he sees what's going on, and he kind of talks to his servants. He's like, what's up with this woman? And he kind of talks to them and sees what's going on. And once he sees what Ruth is doing, he goes and talks to her and basically tells her, hey, I've told my servants to leave you grain. So just go behind them, stay in this field, don't go to any other field every day. Come to my field and we will provide for you. And you can take breaks with my workers, you can be here, you'll be safe, I'll protect you. And Ruth's kind of like, to this man that she doesn't even know, why are you doing this? And in Ruth 2, verses 11 through 12, Boaz replied, I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before. May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge. And so it goes on from there, and Naomi kind of plays matchmaker, tells Ruth to kind of get close to Boaz, and Ruth does everything that Naomi says. Ruth listens to Naomi's God, to the God. It's not her God, but she has faith in what Naomi is saying, and it ends up that Boaz ends up marrying Ruth, and takes care of Ruth and takes care of Naomi, and the story ends and everything's good. But we look at this, and that passage that I read, we see that Ruth had compassion. You know, Ruth saw Naomi's problems. She could have just went home, but she saw Naomi had no one to take care of her, no one to be with her. And in that time, Ruth said, I see your problem, and I'm going to fill it. I'm going to help take care of you. And what that ended up happening was Boaz took notice of that and took care of Ruth. Ruth had her own problems. Her husband died. Yes, Naomi's husband and Naomi's 2 sons died, but Ruth lost a husband too, so she had problems. But she didn't dwell in those problems. She looked to Naomi and wanted to help her and had compassion on her. And from that, compassion was given to Ruth, and all of her problems were taken care of. And we see how God provided for Ruth and for Naomi. He provided for them. We look at this and it's a great story, but when Ruth decided to follow Naomi, she didn't know what was going to happen. She didn't know that, oh, I'm going to care for Naomi, and I'm going to go back to this new land that I don't know, and everything's going to be great. She didn't know that God was going to provide. We can see that, but she didn't. All she knew was Naomi needed help, and she was going to be the one to do that. And so we look into our own lives, especially in this time of Corona, we're getting ready to go back to school. There are so many needs that we all have problems, we all have mistakes, we all have things that we're struggling with, but everyone does. That I have problems, you have problems. And so what I want to encourage you guys to do is be like Ruth and look up. That it's so easy to focus on our own problems that we don't care about anyone else. But God cares about us. God looks to us. God sent his son to die for us so that we could live in him. So as our God cares for us, why can't we care for each other? So what I want you guys to do is this week, as we get back ready into school, be Ruth. I ask you guys, how can you show compassion? How can you look up and first see the needs of others? That there's always a need to fill. So first look up and care about your family, about your friends, about the people around you. But then how can you show that compassion? So we first need to look up, but then we need to act. And it's scary. For me, it's scary to do that. It's scary that, well, is this the time to act? When should we move? What should we do? That all the time, I don't know how to love others, how to show compassion to others, but God provides. And so maybe it's as simple as seeing a kid eating alone at school, going and sitting with him. Or you see a kid struggling to open the door and you open the door for them. Or you just see that your parents or your siblings, they just seem a little off. And so maybe it's just going to listen to them, listening to what problems they have. Just looking around and seeing how you can be a light to others. That's what Ruth did, and that's what God calls us to do. And so that's why I just encourage you guys today to show compassion in everything that you do. Look up and see what others are struggling with, and see how you can help them with that. And when we do that, when Ruth did that, all of her problems were taken care of. So as we show compassion to others, what God does is he provides for us. So will you pray with me? Dear Lord, I thank you for this time. I thank you that you care, that you have shown compassion to us, that even though we sin, even though we make mistake after mistake after mistake, you saw that we needed help, and you sent your Son down to alleviate that problem, to wash all of our sins away so that we can live with you. So help us to remember that, and help us to stand up and to do that to others, to have compassion on our friends, our family, on people we don't even know, to show that we care about them. That it may be hard, it may be easy, but God, help us, show us how to care for others as Ruth did, as Ruth and Boaz stood up and cared for each other, put their own lives behind so that they could serve others. I thank you for this day, and I thank you that we can love as you've loved us. In your name I pray, amen. And so guys, at 6:30, we're going to be having Zoom, and so tune in for that. Right after this, Tabby is going to be giving her testimony about how she showed compassion in her Kingdom Worker story, so tune into that, and we'll see you guys later.
What's up, Send? Today I'm going to talk to you guys about the time I showed compassion as a Kingdom Worker. So as most of you guys know, I graduated from a college called Johnson University. It's a small Christian university, and I loved it, and it was one of the best experiences of my life. My junior year of college, I applied to be what is called a resident assistant. For short, it's called an RA. And what a resident assistant does is assist residents or students on campus for any needs they may have, and also one of the jobs of our job is to enforce rules when rules are broken. It's to talk to your students that are assigned to you. Each RA has a certain students that are assigned to them, and you talk to them if they break a rule, and you give something called a DR, a disciplinary referral. So our job is to love students, it's to love them through breaking rules, it's to love them in their good moments, it's to be there for them in their sad moments, and it really is just this ministry, to be honest with you guys. And part of the ministry is when you show compassion. I was so excited about being an RA. My resident assistant, my RA, my freshman and sophomore year of college, they loved me so well. They were there for me during hard times, during good times, and during sad times. And I could not wait to do this for my residents, my junior year and senior year of college. I did it both years. So my first year of RA, I was ready, I was in training, and I got my list of girls. I knew who my residents were. They were right in front of me. They were all freshman girls, all girls who would be new to the Johnson community. I looked at this list and I was ecstatic. I was like, okay, I'm going to start praying for them now. I'm going to go get things to decorate their doors for when they move in. I'm going to get them little gifts for when they get here. And safe to say, my experience with my residents my first year was not how I expected. There's two girls I want to talk to you guys about in this video, and their names, I will change their names. We'll say their names are Sarah and Catherine. Sarah and Catherine wanted nothing to deal with me. They thought I was crazy, they thought I was weird, and they thought I was annoying. They were so confused on why I loved them, even when I hardly knew them. So our first encounter was kind of weird, it was kind of awkward because they weren't believers, and so they were confused on why this random person was loving them. And so I was like, okay, it's fine. And as I prolonged with the school year, they started breaking rules, so I would have to talk to them, and they would not want anything to deal with me. They would shut doors in my face, they would cuss me out, they would roll eyes at me, they would gossip about me, they would do all these things, and it hurt me. There were times when I would go to my apartment and I would just be crying, and my roommates, they were so comforting. I would go to my boss, the resident director of our school, and just say, I don't know what to do. I love them so much, that's why I talk to them. I try to talk to them about basketball, I try to talk about things they're passionate about, and they want nothing to deal with me. And they're starting to call me fake now. These Sarah and Catherine, they're starting to call me fake because one day I discipline them, I give them a DR because they broke a rule, but the next day I forgave them and I move on, and I'm still loving them and cheering for them in their games. I'm there for them, and I ask how they're doing, and they started calling me fake and two-faced. And my boss told me, Michaela, the resident director, she said, you have to continue to show compassion and grace to them, because that's what God requires of us to do. It was hard, and it was like 4 months into the school year, and these two residents wanted still nothing to do with me. It was, I think, about March, so we have 2 more months left of the school year, where these two girls, they liked me. They started asking questions about me. Started asking about my personal life. They started to really want to know who Tabitha was. And they asked me, they're like, why are you doing this? And I tell them why I chose this job, why I love them, and they got it. It clicked. They started wanting me to come over to their apartment and hang out with them. They wanted me to be cheering at their basketball games for them. They were done being embarrassed of me, and they realized that it was because of the compassion I kept giving them. They told me the same person in their life previously who loved them and disciplined them weren't the same person. They were always two separate people. And so, guys, as kingdom workers, we are called to give compassion to those around us, even when they don't deserve it. I know it's hard, and I know it's so not fun being the bigger person, but I promise you, just like my two friends, Sarah and Catherine, it's worth it, because by the end of the day, by the end of the year, they were asking me about God. They were asking questions about salvation. They were asking about churches in the area. And it's because God made the Holy Spirit in me just continue to love and to continue in giving them compassion. So guys, you are about to enter in a school year because of COVID, or because you're going into high school. It's new to everyone because you're going into a different grade. And every year as you get older, guys, it gets harder to show the compassion of Jesus, because you are wanting to reach the status of maybe popularity, reach the status of having a certain spot on the sports team or in band or whatever it may be, guys. But compassion and love towards others needs to be at the forefront of your mind. Just like compassion, the compassion Ruth showed is the compassion that we are called to carry in our lives. Ascend students, you guys are made to be different in your schools. You are made to be different in your day-to-day lives in your house. I guarantee you guys, your life will be so much more fruitful if you are showing compassion like Ruth. I hope this story of hurt and brokenness, but also of joy and love that I share with you guys today will be encouraged to you all as you enter in a new school year of uncertainty and crazy, that you will be able to be the stillness and you'll be able to show the compassion in your school hallways. I love you guys. Have fun in small groups.
Everyone needs compassion, a love that's never fading. But let